Hello, and welcome to Without Fathom. I'm MacGuffen, this is Daggerheart, and today's video is the second of my Overanalyzing Daggerheart subseries, where I'm taking a deep look at various parts of Daggerheart with the hope that it can help people create homebrew as closely balanced to official content as possible. This episode about armor. Armor is very similar to weapons, but with fewer variables. There are 6: tier, name, major threshold, minor threshold, armor score, and feature. Name is just flavor, and everything else, except for feature, is a number, meaning everything once again fits nicely on a spreadsheet. There are 4 basic armor sets that have version for every tier, and 18 unique armors that each have their own feature. While I want to confidently say that the features modify the armor's other attributes, just like weapons, but outside the basic 4 sets, having no feature appear on more than one armor prevents me from conclusively confirming it. Having said that, I'll still present the feature to you as though they do modify the thresholds and armor score of an armor just in case. The leather armors are the only ones without a feature, so we would consider them the baseline for this theory. Making the spreadsheet for this has oscillated between "this'll be simple" and "this is more complicated than I expected." In the end, it was relatively simple, especially compared to the weapons spreadsheet. First, let's take a look at armors and how to modify existing armor. The basic armor sets, gambeson, leather, chainmail, and full plate, all have versions in each tier, and are essentially the 4 steps of threshold. Gambeson is 1 less than leather, chainmail is 1 higher, and full plate is 2 higher. At least this is how it looks at first, but as I dug deeper I found that there are 3 steps in between each of those, with each step being an increase of the severe threshold on any tier but the first. Calculating these gets very complicated, but I'll start with the simple homebrewing and warn you when we get to the more complicated part. The simplest homebrew you can do is to alter the tier of existing armor. If you want to give an armor to your players at an earlier tier, or if they are really enjoying the armor and want to get a higher tier version of it, some basic math can help you. To go from 2nd to 3rd tier, you just need to add 2 to the major threshold and 7 to the severe threshold. And to go from 3rd to 4th, once again you add 2 to the major, but this time 9 to the severe, or the reverse if you want to lower the tier. In all cases, the armor scores go up by 1 for each tier increased, or goes down 1 for each tier decreased. Why am I not mentioning the first tier? Because it's a bit too complicated for this section. In the homebrew kit, armor has this chart. While it's technically correct, it doesn't cover all the armors, and it doesn't show each possible set for a series of armors. Here are all the sets, as I have calculated them. I've labeled the basic armor sets. The threshold pairs that are used by existing armor are white, and the ones I've calculated are in yellow. To use this, simply choose the tier and severe threshold you want and get the major threshold from the chart. Though I present this chart to you with some confidence, there are some values I'm unsure on. Firstly, I'm unsure of the first tier thresholds. If you're going to make some homebrew armor, unless you coincidentally want to use the same threshold as the basic sets, I can't guarantee that these numbers are going to match perfectly with future Daggerheart products, assuming they have a consistent way of determining these numbers, and continue to use it. Secondly, above a certain threshold value, somewhere between severe threshold being 9 to 12 above leather armors, a major threshold begins getting a -1 penalty, and somewhere between 13 and 16 above leather severe, the penalty increases to -2. We don't have enough armors in that range to be sure where the barrier is, but on this chart I've chosen 10 and 14 above leather. The armor score, as I said before, simply increments by 1 with tier and is not connected with thresholds. Now that we've covered all that, now to the features. There are 21 features, 3 that appear on the basic sets, and 18 that appear only once on a specific armor. Similarly to the weapons, having a feature appear once does not fill me with confidence about how it modifies the other values. But here are my findings. The threshold adjustments are for severe thresholds on 2nd through 4th tier, and as you can see, they're independent of the armor score adjustments. With all that said, we've come to the part I've been dreading, explaining the math behind the thresholds I've come up with. The people I've tried explaining this to tend to go a bit glassy-eyed, so if you aren't interested, skip ahead to the time shown here. Okay, as I explained earlier, figuring out adjustments from one tier to the next is pretty simple, just basic addition or subtraction. This is not the case with adjusting to or from first tier. Let's start with severe thresholds tier 1. From having the tier 4 value of the severe threshold, we subtract 10 and then half the result. We either get the value or a value off by 0.5. We need a whole number, so we need to round it. Unfortunately, it doesn't always round it the same way. To determine if we round it up or down, we need the difference between the target severe threshold and leather armor's severe threshold at that tier. Now, half that number. If the result is even, round down. If it is odd, round up. But if the number is negative, do the opposite. I told you it was complicated. Now to the major thresholds. If the severe thresholds are less than the point where the major thresholds begin to get a penalty, then the fourth tier's major threshold is equal to the first tier severe. From there, subtract 2 to reduce the tier to third, and again to reduce to fourth tier, and obviously subtract 1 or 2 if the severe threshold is above the penalty levels. Alternately, you can use a similar equation that you used to get the first tier severe to get the major thresholds, including the first tier. You need the severe threshold of that tier, subtract the appropriate amount, here on the screen, half it, and round accordingly. Okay, all done with the math. Now, how to create your own homebrew armor features. To add to the I don't have a perfect chart on how to homebrew features from the weapon video, I also have to add I don't know if the features are actually affecting the attributes the way I think they are. Anyway, armor features. The first thing I'll do is once again tell you to compare your homebrew feature to existing ones. Whichever is closest, use that as a starting point. There seem to be 3 types of armor features. The most plentiful are the armor slots matter. These ones grant more uses for, or add restrictions to your armor slots, or are somehow affected by your armor slots. Next are the evasion and traits modifiers. Flexible gives a bonus to evasion, and heavy gives a penalty to evasion, perfectly opposites, but heavy gets an armor bonus to armor score, where flexible gets no change. So this could mean that features with penalties get a little more positive adjustment than bonuses get negative adjustment. Similarly, very heavy, which is twice the penalty of heavy, plus the penalty to agility, gets twice the bonus to thresholds, but the same bonus to armor score, so bigger penalties give diminishing returns on adjustment bonuses, or bigger bonuses count for more. Gilded gets a bonus to presence with no penalties, so that opens up some trait bonus armor options. And difficult, which gives a penalty to every trait and evasion, gets much larger adjustment bonus. And finally are the rest of the features, which is just everything that doesn't fit into the other 2 categories. These could be anything from bonuses to attacks, add a defensive ability, or just ribbon abilities. What else to talk about? Oh, there are 4 armors in the Beast Feast campaign frame, but they're all just renamed versions of the first tier basic armors, so nothing exciting there. Well, that about wraps it up for this analysis. I hope you enjoyed it, and find it helpful in making your own homebrew armors. Please leave a comment if you'd like to discuss something or ask a question. Be sure to like the video and definitely subscribe if you want to see more Daggerheart content. Next, I plan to do a video where I make use of my findings to create some homebrew weapons and armors before my next analysis. So, until next time, have a great day. Bye!